We've seen South Africa's corruption crisis is not only just about law enforcement, but it also cuts to the heart of power and politics and the economy. Protecting whistleblowers is essential. It's not just for justice, but it's about safeguarding South Africa's democracy, our institutions, and our economic stability. Whistleblowers often the first to expose wrongdoing. They face threats, intimidation, and even assassination at times. And the killing of Babita Deokaran, it still casts a shadow over government's promises of reform. And so today we'll be exploring what this means for our democracy, for our institutions, investor confidence as well in the economy. Dr. Levy Ndou, political analyst, is going to be weighing in virtually to explore further. So on that note, Dr. Levy, good morning and thank you for your time at this hour.
Good morning to you, Lizel. Good morning to the viewers at home. Thank you for having me.
We are obviously seeing cases coming to the fore in recent times, the treatment of whistleblowers in South Africa, and perhaps what it reveals about the strength or the weakness of our democratic institutions. And I wonder how you would like to weigh in, given what's been undergone as we speak.
When government wanted to fight against corruption, one of the strategies they came up with was the issue of whistleblowers, and indeed extended to the protection of such whistleblowers. They wanted to encourage people to go and report any form of wrongdoing so that these people could easily get arrested. It was a way to encourage citizens that are able to see wrongdoing to come forward and ensure that such is stopped. Government decided to develop a much better strategy of saying such people have to be protected. The unfortunate part is that it appears as if, with a number of known cases, that to a certain extent, some of these whistleblowers could not be well protected by the police, and those who want to eliminate these people could easily get hold of them because of a number of factors. One of the factors being that our colleagues in the media industry would go all out and report these whistleblowers, mention their names, and indeed that makes them to become easier targets. Whilst at the same time, the state is actually not doing enough to protect such people. And that talks to the ability by government to identify challenges, to come up with strategies, but being unable to ensure that they follow whatever they've planned to the latter.
Well, Dr. Levy, we're going to get into some of those strategies. Just before we head there, though, I'm wondering about what's transpired in relation to whistleblowers and their protection and assassinations or even intimidation. These dynamics, how does it fit into the broader picture of political violence in South Africa? And even if we're looking at corruption-related killings at a municipal level, does this also represent a form of state capture at a local scale, law enforcement agencies exposing their weakness as well?
It talks mainly to the extent in which corruption has entrenched itself in South Africa. And I'll tell you a number of people that have gone all out to report this kind of case and they got assassinated. And some were lucky to be able to live beyond attempts in their lives. Mani and Musecho, the whistleblowers for the VBS in Limpopo, have been assassinated and their cases are still going on even now. And even though there could be prospects for prosecution, it appears as if it has actually taken much longer than expected. Sizwe Nyambi from Mpumalanga nearly passed on because he had over 10 bullets shot at him because he was a whistleblower. You also have got Izima Chaba, who was a whistleblower also in Mpumalanga, who was shot by over 15 bullets. And that, to me, talks to the people who are corrupt, who want to continue with their corrupt activities, and the unfortunate part being that they could be aware that state institutions are weak or they cannot be able to follow up on such cases. And that creates a situation where ordinary citizens feel that even though you can go out and report these kind of cases, the unfortunate part is that there is very little protection that you could get from the law enforcement agencies of this country.
And I mean, Dr. Levy, these are just a few as cases in point, right? Given what's transpired since whistleblowers have spoken up and risked their lives. And Beyond lives that have been lost, I mean, there are also other social and economic effects as well. And I wonder how the failure to arrest the masterminds behind these high-profile cases, including the likes of Babita Deokaran, of course, 4 years later, how does that affect public trust in government? What are the economic costs as well of silencing whistleblowers in terms of our public finances, in terms of investor confidence, but also just the macroeconomic drag that we're experiencing in our country?
It is painful that we have gone beyond 4 years after Babita was assassinated. And this is one of the stories that was highly publicized. And most people are aware that there were wrongdoings that were happening in that area. The unfortunate part remains that our law enforcement agencies, even though they exist, you have got personnel and people that are drawing a salary on a regular basis to be able to do their job. And the unfortunate part, such people do not get arrested. The most painful part is that you have got those who are referred to as the masterminds behind all these activities. And these people will always not be put forward. They will not be known because they could be in a position to bribe these people to an extent where they could be able to compromise and stay in prison for a longer period of time. But at the heart of all this, in my view, it's greed, and people would love to accumulate as much resources as possible towards their direction because of using corrupt activities. That, in my view, has a huge potential to affect the relationship between the citizens and the state, because citizens will therefore feel that even if you can make an attempt to come out and report wrongdoing, you cannot get sufficient protection from the state, and at any given time, your life could be lost.
And that also affects the social contract, right, that citizens and government enter into, and even just how services are employed, how taxpayers' money is also translated. And I wonder, even if we go beyond greed and the accumulation aspect that you spoke of, when we look at some of the initiatives that government has undergone to date, it says that it's reviewing the Protected Disclosures Act, the Witness Protection Act. And so these speak to the more structural reforms that are absolutely necessary for credibility. But there are also criticisms that these reform efforts, or the reform efforts that they allude to, become symbolic gestures rather than systemic change. And I wonder if you could actually speak to that at large, given the viable reforms that are needed but are not necessarily playing out.
In the state that we are in now, it will be necessary to develop new reforms that will be able to address the challenges that we have. My view also is that it goes back exactly to the state enforcement agencies. If you look at the time or the period that is spent when certain cases are enrolled in court, it creates a situation where the period becomes longer and very long, and the opportunity for these criminals is quite available for them to be able to plan and assassinate these whistleblowers who have got all the information available at their disposals. How many cases could always be postponed in our courts, where you expect the courts to move swiftly and be able to take decisions? Of course, there are issues of rights, there are issues of fairness, but at the heart of all these issues is that it appears as if those that are seen to be doing wrong things would always be the ones who would get away with murder at the end of the day, because whistleblowers would actually be treated as if they have not provided valuable information to the government, which will assist society or South Africa to be able to move forward. Another area, in my view, that government has to look at would be the strengthening of our police and ensure that their specialized skills that has to deal with investigations and ensuring that investigations move as fast as possible so that prosecutions should also move in a manner that is acceptable.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the pace of reform is questionable, and the weaknesses have been highlighted, within the policing structures as well. We've seen in recent times what's emerged as well. And so beyond the legal reforms that we've just spoken about, there are other role players. You've got civil society, you've got the media, you've got businesses as well. How does everyone play an enabling role, perhaps to create a more safe environment for whistleblowers? But if we've been looking at remuneration, right, the financial rewards that should be serving as a viable reform, is that something that we also need to be looking into? But there's also risks of that also being abused. So really, if we're mapping out the way forward, what should we be doing to create a better environment for them to come out and speak?
I think we need to resuscitate the relationship between ordinary citizens and the police. We need to ensure that there are a lot of programs in which the police are able to constantly interact with communities, interact with councillors, and ensure that they have a good idea of what is happening in societies on a regular basis. You also need to empower our police officials in terms of what they need to say in public and what they should not say in public. Some statements that are made by police or law enforcement agencies provide a valuable information for criminals to be able to continue doing wrong things because of the utterances that are made. We know that there are challenges of resources. There are challenges of both person, financial, and ordinary resources that are required. But when you're a police officer and you constantly complain about lack of resources, you're actually advising the criminals that they are understaffed, they have no resources, then it's quite easy to perform criminal activities and nothing is going to happen to you.
Yep, and obviously there are long-term effects and risks associated to our democracy if it's not adequately dealt with. We're also just looking at how it impacts us ahead of G20. We're part of BRICS as well. So we're monitoring all those developments. Dr. Levy Ndou, thank you for joining us and for weighing in. Of course, without real protection for whistleblowers, corruption will continue to weaken South Africa's democracy and economy. Much needed reforms beyond just empty promises are also needed to perhaps also just reinstill trust again. Political analyst Dr. Levy Ndou weighing in at this hour.